Holly.
Hello, how are you?
Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah. And I guess we can just start by, I'll ask you, how did you start with animal communicating?
Yeah, I started around about 1997. I didn't start working professionally till 1999. But around 1997, I had a mare and I took on one of the most severely abused ponies that I'd ever met. He was 24. Who was in foal at the time as well, and had the dentist out to her. He said about how frightened she was and commented that he had a friend that could talk to horses, and suggested that I have her out to come and see what help, what the little mare had to say and what help was available for her. It's the first time I'd heard of communication. I was absolutely fascinated after the session and decided that it was something that I wanted to learn for myself. So I read some books, practiced an awful lot until one day I was out in my field and I eventually heard my horses speaking.
Wow, that's amazing. So how long would you say it took you in terms of months or years to get to that point?
Oh, it was weeks. Yeah, with me, It was definitely weeks rather than months. What I used to do to begin with is I would sort of ask questions in my head, things that I wanted to know about. And if no answer came sort of within about 5 minutes, then what I'd do is 5 seconds, then I would just move on and just sort of start talking about something else so that I wasn't hanging on those questions too much. So I wasn't sort of trying too hard, because I think that's one of the things that you can do is actually to try too hard. Due to the brainwave states involved, it's something that you need to be quite relaxed when you're doing it. And then eventually one day I just heard one of my mares say to me when I asked her why didn't she do something that I just asked her to do, her reply was because I didn't want to. And that was the first thing that I ever heard.
Wow, I bet that was a really
that was pretty much my response as well.
Yeah.
It is, yeah, and just like you, when I heard that, I laughed because, my attitude was, well, why should you want to? Because for my proof, I'd already asked her to do it 2 or 3 times. And so on that last time, it was almost like, Holly, get the hint, and so that was her reply, because I didn't want to, which was fair enough.
Yeah, and you're hearing it as a voice in your head. That's how you would say that it comes through.
It comes to me in various different ways. It's primarily voice. So whilst the voice may sound like my own, it can take on different characteristics. Sometimes it may feel softer, it may sound more harsh, it may take on sort of a particularly feminine or masculine type tone, and also as well depending on how the animal's feeling at the time as well, that will also make a difference as to how it comes through. Like when we're talking to people in general, you can tell by how they're talking quite often about how they feel, and that also provides extra information as to how that voice actually sounds.
Yeah, because I found in my kind of energy work and just learning about energy that there's quite a big difference between, say, I'll just use the word thought, but say a thought that you receive and one that you create yourself. So would you be able to tell if it was something that you created yourself or it was from you? How do you tell the difference that it's from you or it's from them? Because there has to be some filter involved.
Yeah, that's quite a difficult one to answer, really, and it's one that I'm given quite often as a question, even by communicators that are already working now. This is sort of conversations that we sometimes have, and there is no definitive answer to that other than it comes as a knowing. It's sort of like a gut feeling that you have that what you're hearing is correct. I also find as well that sometimes if what I'm hearing is of particular importance, highly relevant. That I'll sometimes also get a nervous system response, and that nervous system response tends to come in the feelings of a feeling of goosebumps. And depending on sort of how quick and severe, as it were, or gentle that those goosebumps are when they come, will also give me an idea of how relevant, how important that information is as well. It doesn't happen in every session. I can go a week without it happening, but, inevitably there's always a time when that flags up again.
Yeah.
And that's always a really, really good one for me.
That resonates with what I've experienced as well, that it's just a knowing, really. Do you think there's ever times that your personal experiences or your, I don't really want to use the word prejudice because it's quite a harsh word, but just your ideas about things influence what you're feeling? Like, have you become better at that, would you say, over time? Or is it purely a one-way receiving and you're not influencing it at all?
It's a really good question, actually, because the communication certainly can be biased if the person that's doing the communicating isn't open-minded. And so, sort of when we look at our history, when we look at our background, our training, our beliefs, all of those things can certainly influence what we hear. Because, say, for instance, if we have certain training methods, certain ways of keeping horses that are very much ingrained for ourselves, then certainly that can prejudice us in a way that we don't particularly want to hear anything against that, because it all sort of unravels everything for us then, that what we believed may be wrong. So I can't speak for everybody else, but I know with myself, I certainly go into the communications wanting to learn. And I'm always open to the fact that I may be wrong. And like people, all horses are different in the same way that some people want a 9-to-5 job and some people want to work out in the fields with nobody else around them.
Yeah.
It's all a very individual thing, and I think that very, very much comes through in the communication.
I really like that idea of just wanting to learn, because it keeps the potential there.
Yeah.
And it stays, really. Yeah, it just keeps the possibilities open, because you're not trying to fit what you're feeling into a box, that you've already figured out.
That's it. Because, when we think about it, with the communication, there's no sort of understanding prior of the animal's life, its experiences, that's made them who they are today. So all you can do is acknowledge and accept who they are today and who they are as a personality as well, and take that forward and work with them in that way.
So what would you say comes up most regularly with your communications, or are they all very diverse? What kind of things do you hear regularly?
Quite often, the most common things, I guess, that people come to me with are health problems that aren't getting, that vets and other professionals aren't getting to the bottom of. It may be that the horse is intermittently lame, that it's not showing any obvious signs or swelling. It could be that the symptoms just aren't textbook, so it's very, very hard to be able to sort of fit them into a category of what might be wrong. Blood tests may come back not showing anything other than visually that the horse is very quiet. So it's almost like, where do you start, So the communication from that point of view is able to bring across symptoms that the horse is experiencing that may not be visually obvious, that could otherwise be missed. For instance, a horse feeling nauseous. Due to anatomy, horses are not able to vomit, but that doesn't mean to say that they can't feel nauseous. So health-wise, it can help in that way, but also as well, it's like with counselling as well. It's almost just like lending them an ear sometimes. Just them having somebody that understands what they may have experienced, what they have been through. can also help and sometimes soften them, because sometimes they'll have that frustration of not being heard. And then obviously with the not being heard, sometimes, quite often goes along with behaviour, what we would term behaviour issues. As well, where the horse is demonstrating undesirable behaviour, which may be due to pain, may be due to stress, written issues, and all of those are things that can be asked about. And being as the communications are three ways, so that would be with the guardian, with myself, and with the horse involved, it means that we can also ask questions. It's not just about what they say, it's also about asking the questions. And so what I say to people quite often is don't come with a big list of things, because it may be that what we're thinking in the beginning isn't correct. It may well be that once we ask a couple of questions, the horse starts taking us into a different direction because of the answers that we weren't expecting to hear.
Do you notice whether horses come across more in feelings, that they don't tend to come through in intellectual thought? Because we tend to think that they're not so intellectual as us, that they're more in the present. And you mentioned that they talk about what they've been through. So how does that come through? Do they have memories of the past that are very clear and as we would talk about them, or is it more? Because I would say just because of what I do, I'm not saying that it's how it is at all, but the way that I feel them is more sort of metaphysical or physiological rather than, sometimes I pick up thoughts. That's obviously your area, but would you say that you notice a difference between how intellectual they are and people, for example?
Yeah, it's quite, again, a really good question. I think the best way to describe it is if we were to think of all the people we know and how diverse the personalities are. Some people are more based in energy, physiology, in feeling. And some are more based in intellect. It's exactly the same for horses. I think it's very much a personality thing, very much about how in touch they are with their inner selves. And I don't think it's something that you can kind of have a blanket answer for. I think it's sort of the diversity is as huge, as without a doubt, as it is for humans. What I do find, though, is that when they talk about their past, quite often, when you talk to people, this is certainly one difference now that you've said it that I have noticed, that when you talk to people about their past, quite often they'll just talk and talk. There's lots of things, because I think their lives have been so busy. Whereas when you ask horses about their past, when you think an awful lot of time will be spent being stabled or will be spent grazing, and within that, there's other than work, maybe sort of mixing, with herd companions and things, there's an awful lot of time that's just, I almost want to say, and I wouldn't have planned to say this, but almost like based in nothingness. And I suppose that's what we would interpret as that restful state, that quiet sort of space where your mind is a bit more restful.
Yeah.
And so because of that, because their lives don't seem quite as hectic, and, us as adults, a lot of us would have also lived sort of longer years than a lot of horses that we come into contact with as well. It tends to be that horses don't talk a huge amount about their past unless it's sort of related to the now. It may be that they only bring up things of particular relevance that are important, rather than sort of stringing lots of things together that like we would.
Yeah. So it's not so much about what they've done, but how they've felt in certain situations, or maybe what's been done to them.
Yeah, certainly one of the things that comes across quite often is early weaning. I deal with an awful lot of horses, even in their 20s, that have been weaned at this sort of almost statutory 6 months, which, you know, for some is so early. You know, I've come across horses that have self-weaned at sort of 2 years old, because they weren't ready until then. And you know, the thing is with something like early weaning that a lot of them talk about, that can set them up through life to not necessarily lack the social skills, but the social lack of confidence, and certainly that their ability to have faith in themselves, without questioning themselves and their ability. That's something that is definitely very common, and probably secondly to that with trauma, besides obviously being physically abused, is the selling on of horses. Horses that have been the children's family pet, have been loved, hasn't just been a workhorse, it's been loved, it's been part of the family, and one day through no fault of its own, just because of its size, it's passed on. And it's gone out, you know, goes out into a foreign world where nobody understands its language, where people ask differently of it. It has to assess all these new people that are surrounding them, and in how those people ask them. And the question that remains for a lot of them is, why didn't they want me anymore?
Yeah, it really does. Yeah, that just isn't in absolute alignment with my experiences with horses and the things that upset them the most, because they're so, I don't think we realize how loving they are and how much they care about us. So when we think it's okay to sell them, I think we're seeing them as more as an object, really, that doesn't have feelings and doesn't have attachments to us. So I think if we realized a bit more how much they actually do care about us, you know, we would think twice about doing things like that, or at least not explaining what was happening, or not allowing them to meet their new people. I mean, I find now where I am in life that with my herd, that just the concept of selling them is very strange to me. You know, it's just kind of gone out of my experience as a possibility, because it just doesn't feel normal. You know, it's like you wouldn't sell your brother or a member of your family or your child. So it's the same, really, for me with horses. So I can see that way that we have of seeing a horse as just what they can do is really might be quite hard for horses to take on. What do you feel about competitive horses? Are there horses that really love what they do and they really care about success, or have you had different experiences?
I've never really come across horses particularly that are interested in the ribbons. That's very much a human thing with regards to winning. What I do find with some horses is that they thrive on their work because they have integrity within it. A lot of horses, dressage horses for instance, the working with the subtleties, when the asks are subtle, working with the subtleties and working with the constant cues and everything that they have to put together, forming their sequences, but also the fact that it tends to be that slightly slower work as well, compared with some other disciplines. I tend to find that a lot of horses that are intellectual like that. They like the stimulation. They like the fact that they have to keep thinking. Some horses may be fatigued by that because they're overthinkers, and they're sort of also looking to the cues that you don't intend to offer as well. So from that point of view, there are certainly horses that really, really thrive in their work, like a self-pride. If we find something that we are really interested into, something that really lights us up when we do it, it's not the winning, it's the fact that we want to try our best. As long as we've done our best, we've won for ourselves. We've worked as a partnership with our rider. So from that point of view, certainly there are horses that take pride in their work, that thrive in their work. And I suppose it's a case of, for some horses it's vocational, some are vocational, and some it's a professional calling for them. Again, the same with people.
Would you say they always know what success is to their rider? Like they understand what's going on? And for example, a show jumper, do they understand that, they're meant to clear the jump? Or dressage horse, do they know that they're being required to do certain moves? Or is success more for them just how the rider feels? If the rider's happy?
I think that's sort of a double-barreled answer, because it's about what they feel, and they feel from the rider. So obviously either the disappointment or the ecstaticness even of the person really achieving a high score, for instance, could be that the horse then I'm just trying to think how to phrase it, that the horse then is able to pick up on the rider's energy, which will tell them, we did good there, or basically tell them how it feels after the event. So if the horse is in regular work, for instance, it will start picking up on things like, it's happened several times that it's felt like this afterwards, where the rider doesn't seem particularly happy. It could be that the next time that the rider is particularly happy. And I would imagine from a being able to associate point of view, that the horse will actually notice how the test went, how easy, how fluid it was, with the feelings that came after. With regards to feelings of success from the horse's point of view, I kind of want to explain it in as much as it's about feeling for them. It's about what the feeling felt like. Did it feel fluid? Did it raise my heart rate slightly with excitement without firing adrenaline? What was the feeling that the horse experienced during that? And to come through calm with that excited calm. And when I say excited calm, I mean the ability to carry through the test with charisma, to carry it through without pausing in that confident way. So it all comes back to a feeling, and that feeling is, to me, from what horses have explained, is the achievement. Because it's that being able to do the work with pride, with knowledge, with the correct energy, but be able to show that outwardly whilst being able to also feel it inwardly.
Yeah, I guess that's what that question was about, really, because what fascinates me is how much in alignment we really are. Like, whether it's for the horse just about pleasing the rider or being in a place of comfort about that, or whether there is, and for me, I do feel like there is more, that they do really, when they feel, like you say, when they feel really engaged, or talking about dressage, for example, and they feel really liberated, that they do feel that. And it's a kind of shared, a mutual thing. It's not just because you're happy with them.
Without a doubt, and I think you've hit upon something quite important there, that it is about the connection. So far I've just sort of mentioned it from maybe the rider and the horse's point of view, but it's really important to as you rightly point out, to look at how it works together. And there's something I called the Centaur Experience years ago. I was running a workshop one day, and I had this feeling that I had to go out and get on my horse without tack and work out how to ask him to move and without tack. And I actually burst into tears. I was facilitating the workshop along with somebody else, and I burst into tears at the thought of having to do it. And in front of everybody, I felt a little bit stupid at the time. But what I realised is the reason that I felt like that was because it was so important to me to achieve that with him, to be able to work with him and connect with him in that way. But I was also so scared of failing, and not just failing myself, but failing my horse too, Alfie, a chestnut Arab, that I was sort of really hesitant to do it. But it was that hesitancy and that upset over worrying about failing, it made me realise I actually had to do it, that had the relevance of just how important it was. And I went out into the field with a trainer actually that was on the workshop, and I got on my horse without any tack. He had a head collar on that Martin was holding, just holding on the lead rope. And I got on my horse and I sat deep, and I breathed, and I put my hands at my sides, and I asked that I connect with him. And as I could feel the energy going through my body, I moved my arm, and I brought my arm up. It was my right arm, almost as if, just slowly, as if it were his off-fore leg. And as I did that, I could feel the energy moving up through my arm, and as it hit my shoulder, Alfie started to move that same leg. And then I brought the energy up through my left arm, and his other leg started to move. And it was quite sort of like fluid. You could almost hear the cogs turning, as it were, as if he was just sort of taking the energy and working it out, and the experiences of what he was feeling as the energy moved through his body, so that he started to step forward. And Martin asked him to stand still. And I had to explain to Martin, no, I was asking him to move forward. And I think this is one of the things that can really be taken into dressage, and other times that we work with our horse as well, is that when we work with energy in that way and those connections are made, it could be so subtle, and you can be so much in your own world, an energy world, with your horse and yourself, that to outside people that are observing, they can completely miss what's going on and kind of look at you as if you're doing something kind of magical, which in that moment with what you and the horse are feeling, it is, but it's also a magic that's open to all of us. It's something that we can all achieve if we first start with that energy, personal awareness ourselves, and being aware of that, and how we use and throw our own energy out there and how it's received, that we can actually realise that we can pull and push horses into our energy, and invite them in or remove them, depending on their behaviour as well, just with thought and how we use that shift in energy. And that's something that is so open to all of us, but so many people have yet to experience.
Yeah, I mean, you're really hitting on it's just such a fascinating subject for me. This difference between, it's almost like when you talked about your experience on the horse there, it almost felt physiological to me, and it wasn't physiological in terms of physical movement as such, but it was like that that connection in energy. Like when I say physiological, I mean as opposed to a conditioning. It didn't happen because you gave a particular signal, for example. Because for me, I always find that if I've ever gone a little bit into something that was more along the lines of conditioning, training, like even, what do they call it now? Positive reinforcement kind of training. And it always feels, and this is just a very personal feeling, like conditioning, like you're setting up this system of actions that happen, like you do this and the horse does that. And that feels to me like it takes us out of the present moment, out of the just full potential that anything could happen in that moment. So it's like it's almost like doing a trick. If you do, the horse does a certain thing because you do a certain thing, and it's very limited feeling. And I just love that world of energy where it's absolutely present, like anything could happen right now. And like you, for whatever reason, you felt that when you moved your body in that way, it was connecting with him in that way, and he was responding, and it was all very flexible. And yeah, it's difficult because it doesn't fit in with, like, you can't go into a test, and even maybe an exhibition wouldn't work very well with that kind of approach because it's very, it's just very spontaneous. You can't necessarily repeat anything. But that really inspires me. Like with my horses recently, they've told me that they don't want to work with any equipment. So we've been doing that, and they will come and they'll invite me to get on. And we haven't taken it a whole lot further than that, but that's kind of where we are, because that feels like the greatest possibility of doing that work, of just having it pure energy. I don't know if all horses, I'm sure there are some horses that wouldn't really, they just wouldn't respond to that, or it wouldn't mean anything to them. And I'm sure it's just my personal path. But like you say, I do think it's a big world to be discovered. And it's, for me, finding words for it is difficult, but it is really just energy. It's just that your energy can influence their energy, and that their energy can influence yours, and ultimately you become kind of one energy. And what you were saying earlier about when you had that moment where you wanted to be able to move your horse just without aids or physical, or just with energy. I had a really similar moment one time when I was tuning into the traditional lunging that we do, and it just felt energetically really just out of alignment with what I wanted to have with the horse, because it felt like driving them away. And you can justify it in all kinds of ways and say that it is training and it's this and it's that. But in that moment, it just felt so clear in the energy that it was just a kind of pushing them away. And so I discovered that instead of doing that, you can actually kind of move together. And I think a lot of people have been, working like this. But just with how you move, the horse will move with you. And so it's that difference that I find interesting.